Watch is back. Thank you for joining in again, and now I get to go just right down the street. Instead of looking at videos and talking about holes that are all the way across the country or that I've only played once or twice, literally this course, this hole that I'm going to talk about is, I think, well, the parking lot is 4/10 of a mile from my house. So I'm going to guess the hole is maybe 4.5 mile from my house. So yes, the Glass Blown Open is coming up this next week. I'm sure you are all sure of that. Matter of fact, I think most of you are going to be here. I mean, there's 1,600 players almost. That seems like that's a lot of the disc golf world, and they are starting to descend into town. It's fun to be able to talk about this hole. This isn't my home course, I would say. I don't play country club all that much. However, I have played many rounds out there, tournament rounds, casual rounds, in all sorts of conditions and times of year. So I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on this particular hole. So let's jump right in. I want to talk about, now it was formerly hole 3. If you haven't been looking at the caddy book for this year, if you've only seen this on past tournaments or played this in past iterations of this event, this would have been hole 3. However, they're doing some changes to the course. Hole 6 and 7, what used to be hole 6 and 7, along the road there, are now combined into one massive, almost 1,200 foot par 5, and that's hole number 1. So they'll be starting actually from the parking lot instead of from the swimming pool. That's actually now hole 8, I believe, hole 8 or 9 maybe. Anyway, so what used to be hole number 3 is now hole number 5. It's still the same hole, but it's going to be number 5 this year, even though it's been number 3 in years past. So it is one of the par 4s out there. At 681 feet, it's not the longest, it's not the shortest. Hole 8 is the longest par 4 at 858 feet. So being almost 200 feet less, I think this plays just as difficult as hole 18. Hole 18 is probably a little more difficult to get the 3, but hole 3 is a lot easier to get a 5 or a 6. All right, let's hop on the drone and take a flight over the top of this hole so we can get a better idea of what we're looking at here. The cart path you see going down the right side of the fairway, that is marking OB down the entire right. You have to be left of the sidewalk. On the left-hand side of the fairway, this ball golf fairway that becomes into play about 200 feet in, that begins marking the left side of the fairway. Before that, there is an OB line, but it's not really something that comes into play unless we're talking about some really, really crazy winds. So off the tee box, your ideal landing zone is right here. However, before we talk about what you're going to do from there, let's head back to the tee box and see why getting to this landing zone is a really good shot. So back at the box, you see this first big oak tree. This is about 150 feet or so off of the tee box. You're teeing from the fork in the cart paths here, and it's a super wide tee box. I mean, if you want to line up on the extreme left or the extreme right, it's probably 15 feet across. There's lots of different spaces you can choose here, but it doesn't really solve your problems. So this oak tree, you got to decide what to do with that. Some people will just throw flat and left of that tree and get down to the left. The problem if you do this, unless you have a ton of power, you're probably going to land short of the landing area, and you almost immediately take birdie out of play if you go to there. If you go left of the tree and try to get to the landing area, you are definitely challenging the ball golf fairway. So if you want to get to the fat part of the landing area, you're going to have to make a choice. Either go underneath the branches of this tree, which if you hit those, you're only going about 150 feet off the box. You're definitely out of birdie range. Or if you can take a big wide hyzer out around. However, that shot almost for certain needs wind help in order to get back. You have to go so far around that tree that in order to get back, it's a super powerful shot needed. Also, if you go with that big hyzer and you don't get back in bounds, you're pretty much just going to re-tee because you are instantly going out of bounds. Now, the best shot off the box, generally speaking, is to throw underneath the branches of the tree with something, turn over something, throw it with anhyzer, something stable. And you want it hyzering back over the sidewalk. Basically, If you can get super close to the sidewalk without going OB, that's ideal. If you can get super close to the ball golf fairway on the left without going OB, that's ideal. However, none of those shots is easy, and there is almost always a wind on this hole that is going to make you think twice. So let's head back to the box and look at how some of these shots have been executed in the last couple of Glass Blown Opens and Worlds that was here in 2016. All right, let's take a look at 3 different drives and how some of the best players in the world decided to attack this hole. First up, we have Paul Macbeth. Now we've got a little bit of helping wind, and so Paul is going to go with the big hyzer here. And you can see he puts it out way to the right, up high, tons of power, and because of all of that power, he is able to get it back in bounds and also far enough to be able to attack the hole for birdie. Now let's take a look at that same shot, but done by a player with a little bit less power in Cam Todd. Cam has to go much closer to the big oak tree, even though he's taking the same route. Now, with Cam needing to go so tight and having to put it on a hyzer immediately, he gets back in bounds safely. However, he is about 50 or 60 feet short of the spur of the cart path that cuts across the fairway. He is effectively out of birdie range at this point. Now, Ricky is going to take the under the tree route. And as you can see, you have to hit this height perfectly in order to be able to avoid the tree, avoid the ground, and get the distance that you need over the top of the crest of the hill there. And Ricky does just that, gets all the way down there past the spur of the cart path, right down to about where Paul is at. Paul and Ricky got aggressive off the box, and they're sitting in a position to now they're going to have to throw another incredibly difficult shot in order to putt on this par 4 for birdie. Let's take a look at a perfect approach shot. So this is off of a drive from Nico, and he's actually a little bit short of the spur cutting across the fairway. Nico is going to go with the big hyzer. He's back far enough from the trees to have a decent angle, but he's not back so far where the distance is going to kill him. Now, Nico is able to get it wide enough around and get back and have the easy birdie look. Okay, easy enough. Let's look at another bit of success. Now here's Paul sitting from a good spot, and as you see with this hyzer, with the branches hanging out over OB. And those branches that are hanging out are about 100 feet short, so if you were to hit them and stay in bounds, there's no way you're going to get that birdie putt out of that. So you have to make sure that you miss these branches, and he goes wide enough, but as you can see, he barely gets back in. So he's safe, he's putting, he's on the dance floor. However, it's not just a simple hyzer, because you have to protect against catching that wind gust coming from right to left and pushing you OB left, or that left to right wind, if you put it out wide on the hyzer, it's going to keep you from getting back in bounds. So there's lots of things to think about. But he is inside the circle putting for birdie. So all things considered, anytime you can be inside the circle putting for birdie, that's a success. Now, let's take a look at a couple of approaches that worked out, but they were coming from bad angles. And you can see what happens if you don't get to the ideal landing spot. So here we go with Cam. This is off of the drive that we saw, and you can see he's way back from the spur on the cart path. So he goes with the hyzer, but it's just so long and so uphill, and you have to put so much angle on it that you're losing distance. He gets back safe, he gets to the middle, but he's underneath the trees, probably 75 feet short, with a low ceiling uphill putt. So he'll be able to get his 4, but you can see that the drive put him in such a spot where the birdie just wasn't going to happen. Here's Nate Sexton. He threw a forehand drive and landed at this spot. However, he flexed back in, or he hyzered back in on his forehand, and he's close enough to the trees to where his angle is bad to throw another flick out to the left, playing over the fairway the whole way. So what he has to do is, as you can see, he goes with the low, flat power flick shot. This thing is burning. If it wasn't going uphill, if it wasn't going to run into the grass, I'm sure it would go another 100, 150 feet. But with that low ceiling, he's got to really challenge it, and he gets up there, again, putting for the birdie. So it was a success, but the second shots for Cam and for Nate were much more difficult than if you had landed in a different spot, all because of the bad angle. Now, let's take a look at what happens when you have a bad angle and you don't execute properly. So first up, here we are with Paul. So this is Paul. This is from a drive where he went under the tree branch like we saw Ricky do. However, he turned it over just a tiny bit, and the wind held that right edge down, and he went OB way back. As you're going to see from the throw, he's probably 100 feet short of the spur cutting across the fairway. So Paul has a great angle. He's right there on the sidewalk, and he's going to really go for this thing. But as it's flying, and as happens with this hole, going uphill, and you've got crosswinds, he gets an air bounce and gets a little skip through the thick grass, and he goes OB left. Now, Ricky from a really great spot. And I want to show you that just because you're in a great spot, you've still got to execute another great shot. So Ricky here goes with the wide hyzer, and it just falls dead short of the OB. Ricky's going to be way back. Now he's playing for bogey. Going to have to execute about 150, 175 foot shot out around the OB again, which, man, that can get super testy after you've already gone OB in one spot, and you have to take your drop and then challenge it again, and this time with a different shot, so it's not even like you just got to practice it. It can be a little bit difficult. Now, the thing with this hole is you have got to get in a good spot on your drive. And if you do, then you've put yourself in the place to maybe get a birdie. If you can get on the dance floor, that's good. I mean, this green is like it's like a middle school dance, right? Once you get out there, it's easy to stay, right? Once you get on the dance floor, you're putting for birdie. Worst you're doing is a par unless you get some sort of bad roll away. The green itself, once you're there, is not difficult. It's all about getting to the green. It's all about getting up off of the wall and asking that girl to dance for the first time. So that's hole number, not hole number 3 anymore, hole number 5 at the Emporia Country Club. This hole for me is the most difficult hole on the course. I routinely get 5s and 6s on this hole. A 3 is just out of this world good for me. The best drive I ever saw on this hole, can you guess who it came from? It was during a casual round, so there's no footage of this. This was this is back beginning of last year, right when Paige Pierce was switching over. And we were just me and her and Eric and maybe somebody else. I don't remember if anybody else was there, but we were out at the country club practicing some new discs, and she threw an opto flow. Okay, you got the spur coming across the fairway. You got those trees that Nate was going under. I kid you not, Paige was 30 feet into the trees. It's the furthest drive I've ever seen on this hole. It was an incredible shot. She then had like a low truth or something, some sort of low mid-range, because where she was at, she had no angles to go wide. It's not that it was a great drive. It was just a smashing drive. So this hole is gettable, but this is one of those, like Jamie Thomas says, this is a 4-digit separator hole. If you don't throw 2 shots that are well over 1,000 rated individually, there's no way you're birdieing this hole. I am very excited to see how these guys are going to play this hole this week. Thank you for tuning in to Hole Watch, part of the On the Box Media Network.